Guys hear me now? I think you can hear no sound. Okay, let me start again. Apologies for the false start. So hopefully you guys can hear me now. Hopefully I'm coming through loud. We had some complaints last time that my new microphone sounded, or my new old microphone sounded a little bit quiet. So thanks to Dandrew and Shannon in the LinkedIn chat for telling me my sound wasn't working. I'm still experimenting with some of my equipment. So let me start that over again. Apologies to everybody. So I was saying, welcome to the Delta CX podcast. I'm Debbie Levitt from Delta CX, though still experimenting with my own equipment, and thanks for your patience. I was saying that hopefully the sound is good and loud. People were saying last week this microphone didn't sound good, so hopefully it sounds better now. I've been testing it. And today is episode 56. How proficient can a boot camp or really any UX education make you? And this grew out of a conversation I had with my friend over the weekend, Chris Lenhart, who I'm very grateful to. He's a good friend and very often an inspiration. And so this came from a conversation we had, and then I said, wait a minute, I think I might be able to figure out what is going so wrong here and why we are all fighting each other over boot camps and UX education and things like that. So I came up with a model that I'm hoping will help explain this, and if it doesn't, we'll make it better with your questions and your comments, but I get the feeling I might be onto something. So what I'm going to do today, I don't have a guest, is I made a bunch of PowerPoint slides. So I'm going to show these slides and I'm going to talk over them, and then I'm going to take questions at the end. So if you ask questions while I'm talking or you make comments, just remember I might not see them until 30 minutes later when I'm done talking. So hopefully I'll understand what your comment was about. To people listening on the audio only version, or people who aren't looking at the slides, you're not missing anything. My slide style is usually to just put up a stock photo and talk over it. So if there's anything important in the slide, I'll make sure I stop and explain it, but usually they're just mood setters and not important visuals. So that being said, let's flip over to my slide universe, and let's talk about this. Lou says, I thought I went deaf to my voice frequency. I have many voice frequencies. So sorry about that. Sorry again. I'll see if I can cut that out from the YouTube and stuff. And of course the audio version later. So woo, hopefully my microphone is working and is loud enough. So let's flip over to my slides. And again, I'm not going to pay too much attention to the chat room while I'm going through these, because I want to kind of get through these and then open it up as more of a conversation. But hopefully you guys can see me down here in the bottom and you can still hear me well. So let's jump in. Let's talk about a model I made up 2 days ago, and I'm calling it Phases of CX Proficiency until I find something catchier. And remember that I'm saying CX where other people say UX, but I mean the terms interchangeably. I've got a podcast in a few weeks explaining why I use CX over UX, so please don't ask me about that now. There will be a podcast just about that. Now, for those who want to learn CX, there are 3 phases of CX Proficiency. There are levels within these phases, but for today's adventure, we'll just take a look at the 3 phases. Today I'll be talking about how you approach your CX work and tasks, and therefore, how would you prove in a portfolio or interview that you have the skill level the job expects. This model is only about getting your CX work done. This doesn't look at how you collaborate with other teammates or how you fit into Agile. This model doesn't cover who should work in CX, who should get into UX schools, and who shouldn't. Let's just look at how someone in our profession might choose to approach and do CX work. So, based on my model, there are 3 phases, and they are building blocks, I guess I could point this way, building blocks, science and technique, and strategy. And I forgot to quickly say, won't you please subscribe? Okay, that doesn't really work on a white background, but please subscribe to the YouTube channel. So the 3 phases are building blocks, science and technique, and strategy. And of course, I'm going to spend the next half an hour describing these. I've got about 14, 15 slides. So first, we've got building blocks. They are our CX tools and tasks. Axure, Figma, and Validately are tools. We've got lots of tasks in CX, including card sorts, personas, user flows, interaction design, and prototypes. I'm against design sprints, but they certainly are a building block you could use. Building blocks are our what? Building blocks can be easy to learn and sometimes feel easy to do. You used Adobe XD. You learned how to drop information into a customer journey map. You interviewed customers and asked them questions. You learned how to put sticky notes on a wall and make an affinity diagram. The science and technique is the how or how well of what we're doing. It moves past the mechanical act of performing a task and looks at the quality, depth, style, and approach to the work done. Science and critical thinking turn a task into a technique. Interviewing customers is a task, but did you ask good questions or crappy, flawed questions? Now we're getting into technique. You did interaction design, a task, but did you create a completely accessible experience? Did you use the correct mobile paradigms based on the operating system? Or were you guessing? You ran a card sort, a task, but did you interpret it correctly? You learned Gestalt principles, a tool, but how are you applying them? The science and technique are harder to learn and harder to teach. We know this because we see so many people using building blocks incorrectly or without any technique. Did you take a scientific approach to your CX work, or did you just check building blocks off the list as done? Science and technique are at the core of great CX work, but often not taught at many schools and therefore not learned. Those schools are hoping you'll pick up some technique later when you freelance or get a job. But without help or coaching when you freelance or get a job, how will you start leveling up through the science and technique phase? Bootcamps assume that's someone else's problem after you get your certificate. And how about strategy? If you're new to CX or you're unfamiliar with what it's really about, you might either want to pull all the tools out and use all of them on every project, or you might just randomly pick some tasks you can do and hope they're what you're needed. Hope they're what you needed. Eventually, you'll level up to being strategic about your work. If you want to know why or when you would use a particular building block, then you're moving up to the strategy phase. Taking a strategic approach to CX work and knowing which building blocks to use when comes with time and experience. Like, when do I do a card sort? Time estimation is, when would I do interviews versus observational studies versus a survey? And time estimation is in here too. How long would these things take and which tasks do I have the time to do? These are part of your strategic approach to your CX project. This is normally not expected from entry-level practitioners. Strategy at the project level is learnable. You will learn with practice. You'll learn from more senior practitioners around you. But even at the student or the recent graduate level, even though I don't expect someone to be highly strategic about the project, you should still be able to answer why you did what I see in your portfolio. You made an empathy map. Why? What purpose did it serve? What might have happened if you hadn't made an empathy map? You made a storyboard cartoon that shows a customer dancing with their dog because they like the app you haven't conceptualized yet. Why create that document? What purpose does it serve? And what would happen without it? You might be asked these in interviews, and you should know the answers. A quick slide for the experienced CX and UX pros out there. You're probably struggling with a workplace that is low maturity. They tend to see our jobs as order takers and people who can be circumvented, overruled, and minimized. This presentation might also help you because chances are your company might only understand CX and UX on the building block level. They might think, those UX people make these things, so find me someone who makes things. They might imagine we take orders, we fill out templates, we sketch screens, we make things pretty, and other tasks that can be checked off a list, regardless of their depth, quality, science, technique, or critical thinking. Do I have my critical thinking hat with me today? I certainly do. Critical thinking, all y'all? Okay. Critical thinking hat on. How about yours? So this is bad for our industry when companies think this. More of this type of thinking that great UX is just using tools and building blocks, and it's a bleak future for today's juniors who want to be seniors in 5 years. Employers might also see our building blocks and assume that developers can just read a UX book or take a Udemy course and then they do UX work. In reality, workplaces want the science, technique, critical thinking, and strategy. They want us to find problems and solve problems. They want us to predict and mitigate business risk. They want us to shepherd customer centricity. Companies aren't saving time or money by trying to do any domain's job without what goes into technique, critical thinking, and strategy for that role. I'm sure somebody must have a Steve Jobs quote somewhere that backs this up, right? So, more veteran people, please feel free to share this video or podcast with your manager or other leaders, especially outside the CX or UX department. It's important for them to understand that every skill we can think of can be learned at a variety of levels of proficiency. They need to understand that someone using a CX building block isn't necessarily doing the great, deep, quality, and well thought out work they're expecting unless they've leveled up into the science and technique phase of proficiency. Companies will need to change how they assess candidates and how they utilize the specialists they have. CX and UX practitioners aren't order takers making building blocks. Okay, back to the presentation for all audiences. One of the godfathers of our profession, Don Norman, released an academic paper in March 2020 looking at the problems with current UX education, which he calls design education, at all levels. He wants to see this turn into more of a standardized academic discipline. I think standards would be great, thank you, and I can't wait for his final suggestions, which might come next year. In this paper, he said, quote, "Traditional design school curricula are constructed to perpetuate the teaching and learning of manual skills and working in a studio format. Even in those schools moving beyond craft training, the students still only have a light and superficial understanding of the problems they're presented with, and with this, coupled with their attempt to apply traditional design methods, often leads to the treating of the symptoms rather than the underlying root causes. Even when this is not the case, there can be a lack of appreciation of the skills, knowledge, and resources of the people for whom a design is intended." Woo! Academic papers. Where he says, that's end quote by the way, where he says manual skills and craft training, I'm calling that building blocks. And where he reminds us that we're problem finders who shouldn't just treat the symptoms, but should be dedicated to researching and finding root causes, I'm calling that science, technique, and critical thinking. At the building block phase, you might run with whatever a stakeholder says is our problem or what this feature will do. At the science and technique phase, you are using critical thinking to question that and using excellent research to get more color around one or more problems. You can then validate or invalidate the original problem, understand customers and systems better, and not make the mistake of putting a band-aid on something when we really need to address other or larger problems. Those root causes. He also notes the common problem of students not truly learning to design for the intended users. That tends to show up in portfolios as guessing, assuming, hypothesizing, which I like to say is a fancy Greek word for guessing and assuming, going with what you like, and not doing the right types of research in the right ways to learn what potential and current customers truly need and what tasks they're trying to accomplish. Let's use an example. Imagine a CX student or recent grad is working on personas. Don't freak out that I'm showing a persona on the screen. This is a persona I made years ago for a project, so I'm not picking on anybody. Let's imagine the student learned to plug information into a persona template. Creating a persona is a building block, something mechanical that people can learn to do. Pick a template, get the information in, looks like you did the task. But without science and technique, you're not guaranteed that you did it well. Many boot camps are focused on that building block phase. Learn these tools, fill out these templates or canvases, try to take information from over here and put it over here. When you look at this persona, it might look good. I filled in the template with information. According to the building block phase, my task is done. During the building block phase, we're not so concerned with whether you guessed at the persona or if the information that informed it came from well-interpreted, solid, qualitative research. The information that's in here, did I guess it? Did a stakeholder say this is what they know about customers? In the building block phase, we might not be judging the quality of this work too deeply. Let's talk about a common building block level mistake I see in portfolios. The personas include whether the person is white or non-white. I've seen personas with a personality assessment, like this person is kind, or this person has the Myers-Briggs ISFJ type. Newsflash, I don't architect or design differently for white or non-white people. I don't architect or design differently for someone who is a kind or friendly person versus someone who's kind of a jerk. Demographics, ethnicity, and how kind someone is shouldn't be part of your persona, even if it's in your school's crappy template. If your school has a crappy template, you're starting with a bad building block. Now let's move to the science and technique phase. Did you do the correct research to have gathered the right data to create the right personas? Did you correctly interpret the qualitative research data that informs your personas? Do you know that personas aren't made from survey results? Do you know that personas aren't always one man and one woman, or one white person and one non-white person, as I see so often? How many personas should this set have based on the patterns we saw from our research and persona best practices? I recently saw a portfolio where the bootcamp grad interviewed 2 people and made 3 personas. 2 people is far from enough to interview for making personas. But even if we give that person a pass because school projects rarely have you interview the right number of people, there should be no way that 3 personas are made from 2 interviews. This clearly shows guessing, and you can lose that job interview. And of course, how about strategy? Did you learn when or why to create a persona? When you don't need them? When older personas need to be updated? How long our persona work will take? That's strategy. This proficiency model explains the conflict between those wanting to enter into the CX profession and seniors, leaders, and veterans who appear to be on some other planet. CX pros don't see work as being done well, or done at all, without seeing science and technique used heavily and thoroughly. The student made 1 or more personas and might feel like they're good at making personas. The CX veteran might look at the personas and how they were made, judge the science or technique applied to the process, and say, no, these aren't right. Now we have conflict. The school told the student their persona was great, but here's Debbie telling you this persona doesn't look right at all. Why are these CX people telling me that these personas aren't good when I did them how the school said, and my instructor or mentor or tutor at the school said I did a good job? One of these has to be false. Well, who will the school think is false? Who will the student think is false of those 2 possible groups? The school they paid good money to and might still deeply trust? Or the random people they found on LinkedIn or a podcast or a tweet? One person responded to my portfolio review by saying that everything I pointed out in their portfolio as a negative was something their school praised them for. The way that they wrote me that message made me believe that they planned to stick with the praise and didn't really believe that what I pointed out were truly negatives. In reality, when you hear such feedback, it's because each person or group is looking at different phases of proficiency. The school and student are happy with the persona and they're declaring it a success, but they might not realize they're at the building block level. The building block phase. The CX senior or veteran or hiring manager is expecting to see science and technique. Yes, I said hiring manager, which means this can also explain why confident bootcamp and university grads might feel qualified for their first job, but after applying or interviewing or hearing, they're not quite ready for that first job or they're not qualified for it. And again, I will answer questions in the chat room when I'm done. I'm on slide 6, so give me some more time to get through my content, but keep the points and the questions coming. Let's talk about those hiring managers, because I know that's where everybody's hearts and minds are, and the jobs that we want to get. So we're on the same page. Let's read the dictionary definition of skill. What's a skill? There are 2 definitions. The first definition is the ability to do something well. The second definition is pretty close, a particular ability. Synonyms for skill include expertise, adeptness, mastery, capability, virtuosity, experience, talent, ingenuity, readiness, strength, accomplishment, and know-how. The opposite of skill is incompetence. If a job is looking for certain skills, we have to go beyond, yeah, I've heard of that. We probably have to go beyond, yeah, I've just started learning about that. A job will be looking for you to demonstrate proficiency and skill. Can you do that right after a boot camp or some short courses? Let's look at what an entry-level UX job expects. After searching LinkedIn and finding a few jobs listed as junior UX jobs, here's some of the desired skills: UX research, user interface design, user flows, InVision, Figma, and Sketch. We know those are building blocks. They are tools that might be in your toolbox. But how skilled you are in those will be about the science and technique phase, the techniques you employ with your tools. That's what skill is about. Remember our last slide? Strength, accomplishment, expertise, mastery, and experience. Hand me a hammer or a saw, and I'm not a carpenter. I can use a hammer or a saw, but not like a senior carpenter does. I'm not even at a junior carpenter level. A reasonable entry-level job will expect you to have the strength, talent, and ability that a junior or associate CX or UX practitioner would and should have. We typically judge this first by your portfolio, and if that goes well, through the interview process. You might even be given a design challenge to prove what you can do. If you're turned down by a job because you didn't qualify or weren't at the right level or didn't have the skills, they're probably talking about your science and technique. Remember that some hiring managers will spend less than 2 minutes in one of your portfolio projects. If they don't see what they're looking for within seconds, you might be rejected. You have very little time to make your skill levels and abilities clear. We know how important science and technique are because if you look at the skills required for senior and lead UX jobs, they list the same building blocks. They might expect UX research, interaction design, and Figma, but they would expect your science and technique to be at the level someone would have with 5, 6, 7, 8 years of experience. The difference is how advanced your science and technique have become. And at that higher level, you'd also be capable of more strategic decisions and approaches. In episode 19 of this podcast, I spoke to 2 hiring managers about how they hire for junior positions. Both said they've interviewed very few bootcamp graduates because when they look at the portfolios tell the story of someone who's not ready to do the job. These managers needed someone who can hit the ground running and do associate level work. One manager said that roughly 1 out of every 100 portfolios he sees from bootcamp grads looks qualified for the job. You might say, well, that's wrong. I might not be qualified now, but I want an entry-level job that will train me and help me level up. I understand. That sounds good. But with empathy hats on, and I don't have an empathy hat, let's consider this from the employer's perspective. Give me a moment. You're asking your employer to pay you a junior level wage, even if you're not ready to do a junior level job. But they should hire you, pay you, and invest time and money into helping you learn how to do your job. The employer knows that nobody's loyal anymore. You might learn at their expense and then leave to go to another job. Learning on the job is great, but few employers are offering that. Most will put you on a project where you are the only CX or UX practitioner. Sometimes there is no senior or no lead assigned to mentor you or oversee your work. You'd need to know what you are doing with some science and technique, not just throwing building blocks around. I've looked at nearly 100 portfolios so far this year in 2020, and it's July, and I think I found 2 or 3 entry-level people that I would interview for a junior job. You'll often hear that if you have a strong portfolio, you'll be fine. But what if you're one of the 98% that looks weak to a hiring manager? Then you're not fine. Okay, maybe it's not 98%. Maybe you're thinking, hey, we graduated 6 months ago. There were 25 people in my class, and 5 got a job that was not working at this or another boot camp. They got real jobs. Okay, but that might mean 80% of the cohort's portfolios were weak or weaker than the star students. It doesn't mean disaster, and it doesn't mean you'll never get a job. It means room for improvement. You can take that opportunity to improve, or you can be nostalgic about the praise you got in school, decide you're just fine and you don't need to change and just keep waiting to get a job. Sorry, drinking water. Schools understand that if they challenge you too much, say too many negative things about your work, suggest that you're not ready for an entry-level job, right after they promised they'd make you ready for an entry-level job, or keep you from getting your certificate until your work improves, you might not rise to that challenge. You might just get upset. You might think the school's not supporting you. You might quit the school. The school might lose some of your tuition. Plus, you won't tell everybody you had a great time at the school. You might even spread negative word of mouth. Therefore, I wouldn't be surprised if some schools deliberately want to take more of a cheerleader role and not be as challenging when they're reviewing work and portfolios. It's not a good way to go, but with empathy hats on, it does make sense. Many boot camps are for-profit, and some have investors or were recently bought. So the pressure's on to keep the flow of students and money coming in. It also means there might be low or no standards for how you did your work, the science and technique. If you did some building blocks, you can get a certificate. And it also explains more of those conflicts between CX seniors or veterans and students or graduates. We want to be supportive, but we won't just cheer everything you do. This is not, hooray! Everybody gets a trophy and a gold star. Our work is deep, important, and mission critical at companies. Some UX seniors and leaders believe we should just cheer all the juniors we meet, but some of us believe that's not the instruction, teaching, coaching, challenge, and feedback that people really need. You're not going to be cheered at your job, much or ever. If you can't take challenge and critical feedback now, you're really not going to like working in CX and UX. We're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. We really do care about you. But if you're asking us our opinions, most of us would rather be honest than giving you gold stars for everything. I neither make nor lose money if I don't like something in your portfolio. I neither make nor lose money if you love your boot camp. I neither make nor lose money if you hate your boot camp. I have no horse in the race. If I'm in a mentor or coaching role, my goal is to give you the best information and opinions that I have. If I don't point out where you can improve and I'm just cheerleading you and telling you everything looks great, I'm not being a coach. You deserve better. You deserve honest feedback about your portfolio. Many people who get my portfolio reviews keep telling me things like, wow, I showed this portfolio around my school and to other people, and you're the only one who said these things to me. Everybody said it was good, but you're telling me what I need to hear. Now I know what to work on. Well, thank you. Happy to help. The reason you hear different things from me or people like me than you hear from leaders at your school is because each set of people is looking at the same things, but in different ways. The school might be looking at building blocks. UX leaders who want to be cheerleaders are looking at building blocks. I'm looking at science, technique, and all of the, how did you do this? And most of us outside of your school have no horse in the race. Bootcamps might be good at building blocks. Hey, make an empathy map. Hey, plug information into a persona template. Hey, run a design sprint. But bootcamps often fail at strategies and fail worse at science and technique. It's why you'll hear various people, including me, complaining that bootcamps might not be worth it because they scratch the surface. We're really saying that you only learned building blocks, and that's not enough. And some schools are completely missing important building blocks. Did you learn what agile software development is and how teams work together? Nearly every job description asks for that. I've seen portfolios that throw around the word agile, but incorrectly, which makes me think you heard it, but didn't really learn what it is, even for the building block phase. Schools with the word UX in the program title, but who spend a lot of time on coding or visual design, are probably not giving you enough CX and UX building blocks. That could hurt you in the short and long term. It's why plumbing school doesn't spend blocks of time on carpentry. It's also why when you listen to a bootcamp grad who regrets having done the bootcamp, they often say something like, I could have learned this myself from information that's free on the internet. Their bootcamp focused too much on building blocks. And there's a mountain of free information on the web about CX and UX tasks and tools. But these bootcamp regretters realized there's a lot more to CX work and getting it right than just building blocks. A few more slides. Stick with me. Let's talk a moment about a 6-month UX program I am familiar with. I'm going to take another drink. So let's talk about a 6-month UX program I am familiar with. The first 2 projects the student will do in this program are Project 1, run a usability test, which is basically an observational study, watching people using an existing website, and 2, conduct interviews. These are being treated as building blocks. I know this because the assignment glosses over planning the test or planning the interviews. You get a partial interview script you can use as a template, but a template, model, or sample is a building block. When handed a template or sample, what did you really learn about the technique of planning UX research? This school has you doing an observational study, interviews, and a survey. Why isn't your overall research plan its own assignment before any of these happen? Why would a program gloss over the planning of important tasks and phases? Planning is incredibly important. Get that wrong and you could be setting up weeks or months of a project for potential failure. But it's left out because creating a good research plan is on a higher phase of proficiency, and most schools just don't want to go there. Instead, they hope that working from templates and samples is enough to teach you skills. Is it? I'm coaching 2 people taking this program. I challenged them to, before doing any of this research, make a plan, even though it technically wasn't part of the school project, and make that plan and show it to me, rather than just start interviewing or just start testing. I showed them some plans I had made for real projects. Coachee number 1 started with the template he got from the school. He tried to copy that and work from it. I thought the template had some garbage questions and some participant priming that we would never do. So he was kind of guessing based on what he saw in the template, so I worked with him on improving his research plan. That's what coaching is about. Coachee number 2 showed me a few rounds of her plans, but they tended to be very general, like, I will interview people. She even pasted into her plan a template for a male persona and a template for a female persona, even though she hasn't done any research yet. I sent her long videos on how to improve what she was doing. She decided to take a break from the program and take some specialized UX research courses so she can learn more about specifics and hopefully technique. In this case, the school treating the planning as a building block without science and technique forced this person to find another course to fill in the blanks. I'm filling in the blanks for the other coachee. Does that mean that this school is bad and nobody learns anything and everybody will regret it? Of course not. That's up to each student to judge for themselves. But it's part of what makes me suggest time and time again, that however you decide to learn, you need an ongoing mentor or coach outside of your school who can fill in blanks, check your work, and explain things from their years of specialized experience. I have run into a number of people on LinkedIn who appear to need me to approve of or endorse their bootcamp. It's become so frequent that I'm wondering if there is a bounty on my head, like, get Debbie Levitt to say something nice about our bootcamp and we'll give you $10,000. Please stop waiting for me to say something nice about the bootcamp where you are a student, grad, instructor, or administrator. Please stop telling me that your bootcamp is so different that maybe it shouldn't be called a bootcamp. I've also seen really bad university degree programs. I've seen really bad webinars and podcasts. I've seen deeply bad private corporate training. The problem is CX and UX education, not the word bootcamp. If terrible bootcamps stopped calling themselves a bootcamp, you will have solved 0 of the program's problems. And when I'm not sold on the greatness of your program, please just skip the next standard step, which somehow tends to be personally attacking me in public LinkedIn posts and comments. If I didn't personally attack you or call you names first, which isn't my style, then when you do it to me, you look like the bad guy. I know you're hoping that everybody will press like on you saying that Debbie Levitt is rude, self-absorbed, toxic, afraid of intelligent juniors, uncaring, selfish, and not helping anybody. That doesn't convince me of your side of the argument, and it can make you memorable in a bad way. Whether you're looking for a job or you have one you like, it's never a good time to be memorable in a bad way on a business networking site. CX is a very small world. Though I'm not covering this in this presentation, though I'm not covering personality traits in this presentation that would be important for you to succeed in CX and UX, we did another podcast on that. If you can't have a discussion with someone you disagree with without descending into ad hominem personal attacks or making assumptions about what that other person thinks or believes, CX might not be the right career for you. We get into a lot of conflict. You need to handle that professionally and politely. CX and UX work must be done with depth, quality, science, technique, and eventually strategy. This is the way. Just to answer questions before they're asked, I also typically get, well, if boot camps are so bad, don't just complain. Where's your solution? Or, why don't you start your own school, Debbie? Here are lots of answers. Number 1. I don't have a school because I researched the American rules on becoming a registered private post-secondary educational institution. Not even accredited, just registered. Lambda got fined $75,000 in 2019 for not being registered in California. Registering in all the states where I might have students would be a long and expensive process. I don't have investors, so I couldn't jump into being a school. As you can see from this, number 2, as you can see from this presentation, a school might not be the right environment in which to teach the science and technique at the level that people need to practice it. I came up with some ideas for other types of education or learning, maybe learning while working. But with the economy tanking and with the job market for UX feeling like it's disappearing, it didn't seem like the right time to experiment with people's jobs. With so many people being laid off, it might be hard to convince companies to take more chances on entry-level people. Number 3, nothing is a solution until we test it. We learn that in CX and UX. You can ask me for solutions. I have ideas, but I wouldn't call them solutions until they test well. If they don't test well, I need to iterate on them or go back to the drawing board. Number 4, thinking about current events. I don't have the solution to end racism, but I'm going to speak up about it. Please stop telling people if they don't have solutions, they're just complainers, or they should shut up. Number 5, I've been trying to understand more about a model I learned is being used in India, and I've just learned a similar model is being used in the USA. And I'm not saying anything yet, in case these people still feel somewhat private or in stealth mode about what they're doing. But these models seem promising, and if they work, I would rather support these people than try to come up with my own solution. I don't have to invent and fix everything. I'm happy to support the people getting it right. Couple more slides. Let's do some math for fun. Fun math. Schools I've heard nothing but bad things about can cost $8,000 and sometimes a lot more. Now, some of these programs are full-time. You would have to quit your job to attend. That's money you're no longer making, leaving you dependent on someone you live with, or having to tap into savings if you have any. Well, another option to this $8,000 bootcamp or school could be to combine self-study with online courses plus a private coach. What would the same $8,000 buy you? Oh, sorry, I have crazy hair. I wasn't even looking. So let's take a look at what I think you could spend $8,000 on. That may be better, but again, this is just my opinion. I would spend $2,000 on Michelle Ronson's courses on curiositytank.com. No, I make no money from saying that, and you know that because I didn't give you a code. So go take Michelle Ronson's courses. I trust her. I haven't taken them, but I'm guessing they're pretty good. Then I would say spend $200 on a year's subscription to Interaction Design Foundation. I personally run hot and cold on IDF, but I generally hear good things about their courses, so I'm assuming they're better than they are not good. Let's also say you budget $200 for a bunch of UX and CX and psychology books you should probably read. Now, how about a free mentor to review rounds and rounds of your work and give deep, challenging feedback so you really level up into the science and technique phase of proficiency? Now, not everybody can find a free mentor, and let's pretend we have a budget of $8,000. So what if the remaining $5,400 bought you 78 private coaching hours? That's an average of 3 hours per week for 6 months. That coach could be teaching you lots of things, helping you level up, making sure your work is showing science and technique. And if you don't have $5,400 handy, maybe some coaches can offer a payment plan, maybe a payment plan that starts next year, maybe a payment plan that starts when you get a job. It doesn't hurt to ask. Seriously, if there's someone out there, if there's a paid coach or mentor who you like and you're worried you can't afford them, talk to them. Maybe there's something you can work out. So no matter how you choose to learn, a boot camp, get a qualified, so whether it's boot camp, it's self-study, it's a university degree, it's books, it's videos, it's Debbie Levitt's podcasts, it's whatever. Please get a qualified mentor or coach from outside of the school. There are lots of them out there. It doesn't have to be me. Just have one, free or paid. Please, your proficiency may depend on it. I think this is my last slide, but it's a really long one. So we're wrapping up, and then I will read all the comments and questions in the chat, so keep them coming. So let's look again at our model, and let me answer some common questions that I'm asked seemingly daily on LinkedIn. Is a boot camp that'll teach you some building blocks worth your time and money? Only you can decide that. It depends on the time and what else you could do at that time. It depends on the money and what else you could do with that money. Isn't any learning good? In CX and UX work, we care about outcomes. I would say that the only learning that is good and worth it is the learning that has good outcomes. Boot camps are disliked and regretted by enough people that I can't guarantee that whatever learning you would get in your boot camp was good learning. Too many of you are writing to me to say that you graduated from a program X months ago, you still don't have a job, and now you're getting scared. If we were to judge by outcomes, UX education is failing too many people, which means not all education is good. Can't we do the boot camp and then learn by freelancing or doing real work? You'll often hear, learn by doing. But what if you're doing wrong? Are you still learning? Who's checking your work and making sure that you're learning new things? How would you even know that you're doing something wrong? People hiring you to do freelance or free work, maybe for a charity, expect their mission-critical work to get done correctly, if not expertly. A cancer charity won't be okay with CX research done badly or web pages guessed at, even if the work is free. This is another reason why I remind people to have that mentor or coach when they try to do freelance or real work. Whether people are paying you or not, they are expecting quality work. They might assume that you're some sort of expert because you have a certificate or a degree. When you're doing real work, if you don't do an amazing job with science, technique, and critical thinking, what will your client or employer think of you? What will they think of CX or UX as a profession? If you can see the possible outcomes of that, you can start to see why CX veterans are so concerned about the impressions people leave when they are only proficient at the building block level, and the impressions that might be formed about our entire discipline. Next question I get. If a grad didn't get a job, isn't it their fault for not working hard enough? I hate hearing this. I hate it. Just hate it. It comes off as victim blaming to me. People who spent time and money at schools believed in those schools. They believed the claims and the promises that they just needed a UX certificate and they'll get a high-paying job. Most of them are working very hard and making sacrifices. If their boot camp or college degree turned out to be junk, let's please not say that students just didn't work hard enough. Let's support students and let's shine the spotlight on bad schools that need to change or die. Well then, can we say that boot camps are okay, but you really need to lower your expectations and do more self-study in addition to the boot camp? You could say that, but why would you say that? Why should anybody pay thousands for low expectations? Why pay thousands for a program that doesn't make you ready for a job? If you really need self-study, then why not start there with a coach and avoid the boot camp time and money? Why do we keep trying to come up with things we could say that sound designed to keep promoting schools that are scamming too many people, leaving them in debt and with regret? Can we please stop trying to find some sugar-coated way to tell these people these programs are great or a great start? They might not be great. They might not be a great start. But shouldn't we support every effort someone makes to learn something? That sounds really broad and designed to be difficult to disagree with. But I disagree for the same reasons that I've said. I'm for efforts to learn new things. But let's see, what could you learn? Piano, tennis, cooking, CX. I will support anybody who wants to learn anything that benefits the learner and doesn't harm themselves or others. Not every learning style works for every learner. Not every teacher is a good teacher. Have you ever had a bad teacher? Oh, God. Have you ever learned something the wrong way and then embarrassed yourself? This reminds us that not every effort to learn something pays off or has good outcomes. Students should do way more research into instructors, curriculum, and outcomes. But that can be hard since some boot camps have fake and paid reviews online. What can you trust? If you're considering a boot camp, you need to do a lot of research. You can't just look at online reviews. You need to get the LinkedIn URL for your instructor, mentor, tutor, everyone who's going to be assigned to you. You need to look not just for the word UX, but for the job descriptions to show real UX work for years and years. Not they freelanced a bit. Not a job title with no description. I also see some instructors writing UX on their LinkedIn jobs, but then I can tell from the job descriptions that it was really visual design work. Did your instructor just graduate from this or another boot camp in the last year or so? Some boot camps are trying to hire people who just got their bachelor's or master's in UX but haven't had a job yet. How will they teach you science, technique, and how jobs expect work to be done if they only just learned the building blocks themselves and have barely applied what they learned? Don't be swept away by the promises or the money-back guarantee, which not everybody qualifies for, or the idea that you'll just pay for this later through loans or an ISA. If you have CX or UX running through your blood, you are researching your school from multiple angles. I find that most people who do that talk themselves out of the boot camp or program, no Debbie required. Do some people love their CX education experience? Yes, they do. Do some find jobs after graduating? Yes, they do. Is every school all bad? So far, my opinion is, gosh, nearly all of them look pretty bad to me. But that's because I know you need a certain level of proficiency to get a job. I believe that most boot camps and even some college and university programs are not teaching you the level of proficiency you need. They scratch the surface and hope you'll find a job willing to teach you more. But with UX internships wanting a year of experience and many entry-level jobs wanting a year or more of experience, it looks like it's hard to get a start in CX or UX without showing some proficiency. This is where people who want to move into CX or UX get hung up. Oh my God, I need a year of experience. I'll put on LinkedIn that I have my own consulting company. I'm a freelancer. I'll add UX to my current job title so it looks like I've been working in UX. I'll count my school time as work experience time and say I have a year or more. Lying and fudging are bad starts to a relationship and do not upgrade your proficiency. Refocus on leveling up your abilities with a coach in your corner. I believe that some jobs asking for that first year of experience might be cool with less than a year if they see a portfolio that tells them the story that you can do this job with depth and quality, with science and technique, and with great critical thinking hat on. What about you? Put yours on. Time to aim for that. No matter how you are learning, work on leveling up into the science and technique of what you do. And that, my friends, is the end of that presentation. Taking a drink. Fixing my hair. All right. Thank you, everybody. We probably will run a little bit late today because I want to address all of the comments and the questions in the chat room. So please do leave your questions and comments in the chat room. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube at the Delta CX channel if you enjoy my content or takes on things. And you can also join for free my Slack workspace, which is deltacx.link/join Slack. And I'm there to help out as well. So all of that is free. I do not have some sort of monthly subscription or boop bop a beep. Now I can't find my cursor. Has anyone seen it? Okay, there it is. There we go. And I heard that some of you really enjoy, see, Michael George Burke loves the hat. Good to see you, Michael George Burke. Do I call you just Michael? And also I was very excited to hear that you guys really enjoyed the confetti. I did that today. That was fun to create. So let's roll back in the chat, and I'm going to take a look at what people are saying, and let's get through it all. Sorry again about the beginning where you couldn't hear me. I will try to edit that. Lee says, hello everyone. Hi Lee, I'm so glad you made it. Lee says, this is a class in and of itself. I hope so. Darren asks, Simons asks, when is it okay for a proto-persona to be okay? In my opinion, and I know there are different opinions here, my answer is never. Because the basis of a proto-persona, no matter what model you follow, whether it's Lean UX or other models, the basis of a proto-persona is let's guess rather than do the research that would give us the information that would fill in the persona correctly. So to me, a proto-persona should never be done because it is a guess. It is based on guesses and assumptions. You can also check the Nielsen Norman Group video or article, I can't remember which it is, on when do we want to use guesses and assumptions, and the answer is never unless backed into a corner. So I suggest that people never do proto-personas because proto-personas are guesses and assumptions, and our work is all about depth, quality, science, and technique, which means we are doing proper research to learn about people, not guess about people. Darren says, Darren Hoods, and I don't know what he's responding to because this is back in time, says, fantastic point. Many hold allegiance based on biases fueled by who they paid money to and not as a result of critical thinking. Okay, so that's probably where I said, when I look at your portfolio, I don't have a horse in the race, but yet you don't believe what I'm saying and you believe the people that do have the horse in the race. Louis is here. Happy to see you here, Louis. Says, great point. A great school work doesn't necessarily translate to great commercial work. Yeah, that's really the point of a lot of what I've said in this podcast is just because something looked good for the school and the school gave you the thumbs up doesn't mean it would really fly in the business world. Stephanie, always happy to see Stephanie, our guest when we did the surveys podcast, says, I am honestly afraid to give people feedback on their portfolio because of that exactly. My feedback might go against what the school told them to do, like those 4 out of 5 stars in Adobe XD ranking. Someone joining us on YouTube named X, so I'm going to call you X, says, I'm self-taught in CX, and once I studied the building blocks, I went in deeper to study the science and technique. I can't believe there are bootcamp grads that get hired without this knowledge. There absolutely are. Some people do get hired, but really what we're finding right now is that many of them aren't getting hired, and that's where the crisis comes in. You have all of these people who spent time and paid money to get an education and ultimately might not be qualified to do the job, and now they're very frustrated and they're out a lot of money. Louis says, I personally hardly give feedback on portfolios because I myself don't have a portfolio and I'm not good at CV writing either. Debbie helped me with my CV. Well, thank you. Stephanie says, I have PDF case studies and coming soon, because no time and NDAs, hard for me to judge, but at the same time, I also hire. So I tell them what I expect to see when hiring. Hey, even my portfolio isn't perfect. I say dentist's teeth. I know my portfolio could be better, but I'm also at the point in my career where there are other things that help tell my story, and usually, outside of a pandemic, I usually don't have a problem finding some work. Darren says, it's downright unethical. Well, I don't know what he's responding to because he forgot that I look at these later, and I don't know what he's responding to, but chances are I agree. Darren Hood also says, UX is not a politically correct discipline. That's true. We are coming in to be lawyers and advocates for what the customers need and what the customer's tasks are or jobs to be done, and we don't always care about the kumbaya and the, ooh, let's have everybody design and that. Well, I've covered that in other things. Darren Hood also says, reminds me of the time a group of people were giving feedback on a photo. Everyone liked it and found no fault until I arrived. I just so happened to be a photographer and I noticed several issues. Stephanie says, go to Dribble if you want shallow, amazing comments, not to Debbie. That's true. I am going to give you the tough love, or at least my honest opinion. If you want to hear how great it is, post it on LinkedIn or post it to Dribble and you will get the cheerleader. Yay, your portfolio's awesome! Darren Hood says, politically correct presentations will hold back. Politically correct presentations spare critical factoids and data to spare people's feelings and kowtow to hippo thoughts and in out. Hippo, everybody, is highest paid person's opinion. X says, I could have studied this myself on the internet. X says, I heard this so much from boot campers, which is why I never took that route. Niku is here. Hi, Debbie. Glad to be here. I'm happy you came by, Niku. I saw your Instagram story this weekend. Lee says, that's right, X. Darren Hood says, X, yup, just told someone that yesterday. X says, planning your research. Yes to this. Even Medium blogs and online articles don't talk about this. Oh, don't get me and Darren started about the quality of what's on Medium. Killing me. Darren Hood says, Medium most... Oh, you did get him started. He says, Medium mostly sucks. No accountability. X says, I ended up fleshing out my CX knowledge at a university-accredited course that went in deep with research methodology, an online course. Darren Hood says, more accountability, better instructional design, contains actual learning frames. Amen. Filling in the blanks is so important, no matter the learning resource. Louis says, it's funny how these methodologies are in fact using good practices in incredibly bad ways by extrapolating the original application and objective of an educational activity but beyond their intended use. Woo! I think a lot of us agree. Michael says, is this video about boot camps or about you? If you came in late, this is not necessarily about me. This is about UX education. Typically, boot camps could also be some university degrees and other certificate programs. It's really about programs. But if you're ever not sure what my topic is, just look over my head. I've always put the title there. That should help. Lee says, brilliant. Don't know what she responded to, but thank you, Lee. Maggie says, let me just say, I really appreciated the confetti. Thank you, Maggie. I accidentally just set off, I didn't press anything and I set off the confetti. So that was pretty neat. Do I say confetti and it gets set off? I don't know. I didn't set that up. Suchandra says, could you please give us some suggestions for creating a strong CX UX research portfolio? I think we talked a little bit about that in a previous podcast with Michelle Ronson. I would say go through the live podcast archives, and I think it might have been episode 30-something, and look for, I think it was called UX Research Interviews and Portfolios or something like that. Try that, but ultimately, Michelle Ronson at curiositytank.com is the right person to talk to. Louis agrees the confetti is rad. Thank you, Louis. Adis is here and says, Suchandra, the episode from last week provides an in-depth overview of the portfolio. Totally. You can find that in the podcast archive as well, but it wasn't necessarily a research portfolio, and I know they're not totally the same animal. Lee says, excellent investment in professional development. I think she posted that when I had the slide up about how could you spend $8,000 and how might you want to invest in yourself. Lee says, for those working, they may have company learning funds to cover this cost. Also true. Ask your job if they would pay for some of this stuff. Louis says, yes, this is what I hear from some developers when you assess their products. You can always fork it in GitHub and change it your way. Sad to see UX peers with the same mentality. Lee says, proficiency and ability to grow their income based on their capabilities. I'm not too sure what that refers to. Darren Hood says, education without proper instructional design and strategy can't possibly be good. Louis says, Curiosity Tank looks good. I agree. I haven't done the courses, but I've had Michelle as a guest on the podcast 3 times, and I just feel like I trust her. Lee says, not to mention there's often insufficient screening to accept applicants to their programs. Yes, I didn't even cover that here. I didn't even cover how should we assess applicants to programs, should we assess them, how should we assess them, who should be in, who should be out. So I didn't even cover that. X says, these boot camps are just capitalizing on people's aspirations with the shortcut drug to the industry. Everybody's agreeing with X in the chat room. Darren Hood says, over 90% of the experiences I've had working with bootcamp grads has been downright ghastly and gut-wrenching. Ooh, sorry to see that. He says, more specifically, only one of them were beneficial to the work, and he hated his bootcamp experience. Boo. Lee says, that's heartbreaking for the person who paid thousands to learn something unusable. Louis says, so it's more comments than questions, everybody, but this is great. This is why you join in live. The conversation and live interaction we get is really fantastic. Louis says, after the basic course, people have no advanced path. The very absence of an advanced path is a sign the one basic track offered will be overloaded. Darren Hood says, extremely low emotional intelligence, can't relate to the work, not good at problem solving, vicious and toxic towards senior practitioners, pretty much relegated to visual design, as Debbie mentioned. I think that was Darren's description of working with the bootcamp grad, and that is sad. Michael loved my hat. Thank you. I have a few. And Darren says also about that bootcamp grad, the denial they walk in was off the charts. Ouch, ouch. Okay, we have a question. Karen, hi Karen on LinkedIn, says, what do you suggest for people wanting to have a career change into UX design? Please see episode 37 of the podcast called So You Want to Work in UX. I would say that podcast plus this one plus my podcast a few days ago about portfolios are probably the 3 podcasts that will help you the most on this channel specifically to answer that question. Maggie says, yay confetti. Louis says, I found problematic when people who are supposed to spot biases and illogical thinking end up being biased and illogical in their argumentation and attack. Lee says, how to qualify a training program for UX or CX, depth, quality, science, technique. Exactly, Lee. Bingo. This is my model of phases of CX Proficiency, and that's the middle one. Darren Hood says, I use proto-personas when I have minimal data and we need to work with something quickly, but I won't guess. Thank you, Darren. We don't want to guess. Maybe you just have the smallest persona in the world based on the real information you have, but based on the proto-personas that I've seen in portfolios and what's recommended in things like the Lean UX book, I do not recommend guessing at personas. Brahma is here. Hey, Brahma says, 3rd podcast in a row that I've attended. Thank you, Brahma. I can vouch. I'm hooked into the valuable content. Well, thank you. Please subscribe over on YouTube where the delay is a little bit shorter. It's a little bit more of a conversation, so come subscribe there. Lee says, gotta run off for a call. Thank you, Lee. Darren Simons, not Darren Hood. Darren Simons says, great topic of discussion today. As you know, I'm a fan of your work. Thank you, Darren Simons. I need to get to know you better. I'm a mentor for a boot camp. I take what I do extremely seriously. It's not about me just collecting a paycheck. I truly care about all of my students and their outcomes. I totally get where you're coming from. I hope my mindset will help students excel and land roles within our industry. I hope it will too. I hope you're helping them level up from the building blocks that bootcamp is probably teaching them, because I have seen a number of portfolios from the bootcamp where you are a mentor or whatever you're doing, and they are not always, but often weak portfolios. So I really hope that you are helping bringing those people up into the science and technique phase. Darren says, tough love is the most beneficial. And he says he loved the biased and illogical comment statement from Louis. Wonderful. Guys, that catches me up with everything. I know we're running 10 minutes late. I try to keep these around an hour. But let's just say that if there are no more questions or comments, we will start winding down, which means I'm going to give you a quick show notes on what's coming up on this channel. This week there are no guests. Tomorrow is office hours, Ask Me Anything, so please come and ask me anything. Wednesday I'm doing my first live lesson. So instead of a podcast or instead of office hours, I'm going to be teaching a little bit of a beginner's look at information architecture. I find that information architecture is terribly overlooked by many programs, and you're told, now just make the menus. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more. Now, of course, I might be a little bit at that building block level, only a microscopic amount at that science and technique level, but I at least want people to get a good foundational understanding of information architecture so that perhaps you can pursue more about it and not gloss over it. That is Wednesday. There is no charge. Just show up. Monday the 13th, I'm going to talk about modeling conversion rate improvements. And I've got a little tool I've been playing with of what would it look like if you could make something 1% better? How much money would your company make? Cool things to check out because it can sometimes help us prove our ROI or prove the budget we would like to have. Tuesday the 14th, of course, is office hours, Ask Me Anything. Wednesday the 15th is our live stream UX education brainstorm. So on the heels of a podcast like this, we're all going to get into a little brainstorm I've constructed. Yes, it's got a construction to it, and we're going to think about what can we do to improve education. So join there. Let's see. Yeah, I'll tell you more later. Let's see. Let's see, I'm getting spam. Thank you for the spam. I'm getting lots of spam. Okay, so no other questions on my phone. Let's see what else is in the chat. Any last questions or comments? Louis says, sometimes tough love is the best love. I used to pass everyone in my classes when I was a young teacher, and then these students would go to another school and have to redo the courses I passed them. Yeah, I'm glad you're saying that, Louis. It is tough. You know, you want to be that cheerleader. Of course, cheerleader means I hit this. You want to be that cheerleader, and you want to support people, and you want to say positive things, and you don't want to fail them. But sometimes the tough love is really a better thing. I actually have a slide here that I took out, which was the long story of how I left. I was originally going to be a medical researcher. And it was a mentor who was like, you know what, I don't think you want to be a medical researcher. And of course, that's a very short version of that story and conversation. But without that person having said that to me, I don't know where I would have ended up because he was right. He saw something in me that said, okay, you can become a medical researcher, but I really don't think it's what you're meant for. I don't think it's in your heart, the way I see other things in your heart. And I think if we can have mentors and coaches like that, who are really paying attention to us, who really care, who don't have a horse in the race. This guy doesn't have a horse in the race if I become a medical researcher or not. So these are the important things, and these are the people we need to surround ourselves with. I can tell from what's going on LinkedIn that everybody just wants to press like on, if you love boot camps, you're pressing like on all of the people who are fighting me. Believe me, I see it. LinkedIn sends me a notification. You pressed like on that guy's thing. You pressed like on that other guy's thing. You pressed like on that guy's thing, and you didn't press like on the things that I was saying. I get it. I get it. That's fine. But where are you going to go? Where are you going? You can dislike what I'm saying. You can block me on LinkedIn. Where are you going? And with what abilities, proficiencies, skills? X says, Debbie, how long did it take for you to develop the science and technique of your building blocks when you first started? How should we scope our own expertise or the development of our expertise? I actually have a podcast in my channel. You might have to search for it. I think it's hiding at the bottom of office hours. It is the extremely long story of how I got into UX, because sometimes people ask, so it's the very long version. But the long version is that I didn't really start with too many building blocks. I kind of stumbled into it. After dropping the whole medical research idea, I started taking psychology courses at college for fun because I always had an interest in psychology and I thought it would be fun to take cognitive psych classes, and I took 3. And 2 of them heavily influenced what I do today, and 1 was really just fun. Psychology of music hasn't really heavily influenced me, but psychology of language definitely has, and Psych 1, Intro to Cognitive Psych, certainly did. So I happened to start with some pretty good building blocks in cognitive psych and Gestalt principles. And then I ended up starting my own web design company in 1995. And I said, I think I want to, and I'm not an artist, so I was kind of strategizing websites and hiring other people to do more of the design and the coding. I wrote the HTML and they wrote the fancy stuff. And so I'm not an artist, so I don't come to things with this hugely aesthetic perspective. And I said, I want to design websites based on what I learned in those psychology classes. So I got lucky that I started with some pretty good building blocks that kind of threw me into some pretty good science and technique early. 1995, that's amazing. Yes, I'm old. I'm super grizzly and old. Wah, I'm 48. Wah. Okay, so thank you so much for letting us run late today. Thanks for joining in and keeping it active. We had lots of people in the live rooms today. I'm so happy to see all of you. Please remember, please subscribe to YouTube. I am shooting for 1,000 subscribers. I'm almost at 600. I'd love to see 1,000 just for kicks because that's a big number. And you can also join my Slack channel if you'd like to hang out, meet other people, and ask me questions. If I'm awake and not on an airplane, which is not happening this year, I will do my best to answer your questions quickly. So please subscribe to the Delta CX YouTube channel. And if you'd like to support what I do, just tell other people about the Delta CX YouTube channel. I have nothing to sell you. I've got some extra courses, but in general, I have nothing to sell you. You can buy my extra courses, you can hire me for coaching, but otherwise, I've got nothing to sell you. I just want you to come by here. Maybe at some point, I'll put ads on the YouTube videos and see if I can make 37 cents. But other than that, I just want to create a free library so that you guys can get the information that you are asking for and that you need. So, with that, I'll wrap up and say thanks to everybody. Stay safe. Have a good summer or winter, depending upon where you are. And hopefully I will see everybody tomorrow for office hours. Ask me anything. X, great to meet you. Not too sure who you are, but private message me. And see everybody soon.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.